Well, hello and welcome back to Read Becca. We're going to do something a little unusual today in that this is not specifically a bookish video. So this year, the year of our Lord 2025, I have been trying to move myself slightly away from getting stuck in ruts and follow my whims a little bit more toward what brings me joy. And so in doing that, I have been following those little rabbit trails of recommendations, specifically to YouTube in terms of this video, where previously, for years, probably more than a decade at this point, I've been on YouTube following booktube primarily and have rarely watched very much else other than momentarily. And so I haven't really subscribed to a lot prior to this year, but I have been going down those routes of discovery to new and exciting types of content on YouTube that is taking me a little away from booktube in terms of my watching or consuming some of my previous booktube time, and I'm enjoying that. So I just wanted to share some of the things I've been watching outside of booktube. I'm cheating on you all a little bit. So let's ease into this by starting with books and cats as a topic. So these are things I haven't really mentioned before and they don't quite fit into booktube. So the first is a bookish channel that is not quite booktube, but it's for a bookshop, and that's Parnassus Books. This is the bookshop owned by Ann Patchett, and every week they have a video out called the Laydown Diaries. And so I really appreciate this channel because of that. Specifically, they also feature some author events, things like that, but mainly it's the Laydown Diaries. And that is a quick, it seems very informal. I assumed it was kind of prepared, or they would maybe stop and refilm things, but recently it is leaning more and more toward, I think they just do this all in one take and kind of let any errors stand in filming the books that they're getting in for new release on Tuesdays, and they're preparing to put out at the bookshop and going rapid fire through those exciting new books. And I've been exposed to so many new things that they've covered there that I haven't really seen around my normal circles on BookTube. So I highly recommend that. The cats portion of the books and cats is Flatbush Cats. This is a rescue that I follow on YouTube, and they have specifically made the effort over many years in the past to feature themselves on YouTube, to give those heartfelt stories from rescue to finding a home for the cats that they're rescuing. Specifically, they are a fairly large shelter in Manhattan, a very high population area with a real stray problem. Over recent years, I want to say a year, maybe 2 years, they've been actively progressing toward opening a low-cost shelter vet, and that really serves their community. And so watching their videos is actually helping them out, number one. And number two, they have those great stories. They also recently have kind of incorporated some things to do with their vet services, where they're actually bringing in kind of an advocate for the cats there who's talking about the situations there and kind of how they deal with community engagement, those sort of things. And those have been really wonderful videos to watch. So let's move on to the next topic, into more of the videos I've been watching. The next subheading, I think, will be travel and food. So the travel videos I have are Travel Man. This was a show that I think has ended, but I don't have very much access to British TV, so it may still be running and I just don't have routine access to it anywhere other than YouTube. But this stars Richard Ayoade and a variety of his actor and comedian friends coming on to travel for a very short period of time, like 48 hours, with him. And they're trying to go to someplace far off, distant, and exciting in those 48 hours and cram in lots of exciting things, very often really silly things. And it just brings me so much joy. So I had watched some of it previously when a couple seasons were on a streaming service that I had, and now there seems to be very much more of it available on YouTube. So that seems to have opened up to US viewers much more. Ayoade is a certain acquired taste. He was famous for the IT Crowd and maintains that sort of very dry, nerdy character, even in his real life. So I think he will not work for everybody, but overall the play with other people as he's traveling, the bouncing humor off of them, I think really will work for most people. The second travel show is Jet Lag the Game, which I have mentioned a couple times before in terms of what I'm watching, because that is an ongoing, running, multi-series game show, more or less. It's kind of like Amazing Race. It's available on both Nebula and YouTube at a delay. And it's so cool because they redesign the game every season, basically. At this point, they're doing multiple seasons per year. They also have released a sort of card deck so that you can play the game yourself. And more or less, it's about using transit and playing a game with it. Many times they've done things like tag, where you have chasers and runners. They've done Connect 4 across different states. They've done getting from point A to point B in a race. They've done all kinds of different formats. And so it's attempting to use what transit you have available, as well as some sort of challenges and gameplay to try and make it more tense. And it's so fun. So I have seen some people around BookTube recently getting really into this show, and it's just wonderful. The production value is quite high for being this kind of casual thing that is run mostly by a handful of people. Very small number of people are running it. But it brings me so much joy. So the food stuff I have is a bit all over the place as well. So the first is kind of a podcast, but it's a video podcast called Dish. And this is put on by the British company Waitrose. And you would think that would be very promotional and salesy, but it really isn't. It's a very good time. I just love this show. It features 2 interviewers, one of whom is a really famous chef and the other one who is kind of more a personality. And they both are great interviewers, but they bring on famous guests, usually who are promoting something, and they cook them a meal, and then they have a conversation over that meal and talk about both food and life and kind of what's going on in the thing they're promoting. And it's just a delight. It's very calming. The next food-related show that I'm watching is Epicurious. And this one is different every time, I would say. Sometimes it's a competition. Like recently they had the Dimension 20 players on there, and they all had to kind of show and compete in using cooking skills. Other times it's people cooking the same thing in different ways and just showing variety of methods of cooking, comparing different styles internationally of food. And that kind of ties into the next one for food, and that's Jolly. So Jolly is really fun because it's outside of my wheelhouse in that it is very much a sort of social media show. And I think it's got a lot of clickbait because it's purely focused on people from one area of the world trying food that's outside of their wheelhouse and reacting to that. And so most of it is Brits reacting to food that's wildly outside of their culture. So a lot of the early stuff was Brits reacting to like Korean food. And I enjoyed that so much because it's so wildly different from the sort of taste profile that is typical to the UK. And when it started years ago, there was much less access to international food. Even, in my youth, there was much less access globally to international food. And now that has increased. And so a lot of these things they were trying before are now very normal. Things like gochujang, most of us know what that is now. And in the early videos, very much not. So yeah, those ones all bring me a lot of food joy and give me so many ideas for things I would want to cook, but probably never will. And even more ideas for things I want to try. Into the next category is what I'm going to call variety and performance. I don't know what else really to call this. This is just a mishmash of stuff. So another kind of show that has transitioned to YouTube is Taskmaster. This is a British comedy show where literally these sort of impossible tasks are assigned. I think in the US probably comparable would be the minute to win it type of challenges, but these are more long form. There's a panel of comedians who are on the show. Each season is a different set who have been selected to compete. And every episode, they're given these tasks and have to do these weird, impossible tasks. And sometimes a particular comedian will try to win the task by doing it quite correctly. And sometimes they take the strategy of trying to make it the most funny and entertaining and hope to win that way. And so the strategies are very much always entertaining though. And so watching that and then them sitting down all together and watching back how they have completed this task is so funny. And particularly the latest series, season 19, that was just on YouTube, is probably the funniest cast there has ever been. And I think I mentioned this before when it came out. Jason Mantzoukas is the best, but he ended up teaming up very closely with someone else in this year, Stevie Martin, and they were the perfect duo. Best duo ever. The next one is Letters Live. This sounds like it would be very boring, but this is literally just famous people, actors, comedians, singers getting up in front of an audience and reading these either hilarious or heartfelt or meaningful letters from the past or present out in front of this audience as a sort of dramatization. And they're so good. Like, they really, really touch me and capture me and bring the value of letter writing, really. I am always a person who's interested in an epistolary book, and these letters have certainly made me even more of a letter lover. The next one is one-shot questers. This I thought was connected to something else with one shot in the title, and I don't think it is actually, but this is kind of a sketch comedy surrounding D&D. So the people are sort of playing out scenarios to do with D&D and actually pretending that they are the characters in a D&D game. Sometimes there's some rolling of die, but they're not actually playing a D&D game as far as I could tell. They're just sort of doing sketch comedy in that format. And as a massive board gaming nerd, it really appeals to me in that way. So I find it very funny, but it is a real nerdy sense of humor for sure. Next, again, I really draw on the British panel shows for sure. Like I'm personally just very connected to that. So Unbelievable Truth is a British comedy panel show, but it's an audio only. And I think it was on British radio, but you can listen to it here on YouTube. And it is hosted by David Mitchell, who is a very famous British comedian, not the author. And I love him, so just go with that as you will, because he's not everyone's cup of tea. He's very snarky and sarcastic. But he's just kind of hosting and wrangling the people for the most part. The actual premise of the show is that people have to get up and present a completely false argument and history of a topic that they're given, and they have to sneak in a couple of actually true things into this completely false presentation. And then the other people on the panel have to sort of ring in when they hear the thing they think is the truth and try to spot the true things. And that's why it's Unbelievable Truth. So it's just very, very fun. For me, kind of reminiscent a bit in a silly way to No Such Thing as a Fish podcast, which I also love. Next is Lateral with Tom Scott. And this is an unusual show, and it's very hard to get across what it even is without you watching it. So basically, Tom is hosting, and usually there's 3 people on a panel. They're not usually famous people. They might be internet famous. I don't know who they are usually. But they are usually funny, and they're usually somewhat nerdy. They're given a question, and the host has to sort of lead them by giving them vague clues indirectly toward the answer to that question. And they can ask questions and continually work themselves toward it. But it has to be somewhat indirect. So I also have the book, Lateral, which is the same sort of thing. It's questions and then clues toward an answer. And so it's questions like, a shop has a tray of Lego bricks on the floor. What is it selling? So it's obviously not going to be just a Lego store. And it's going to be something that seems like a weird answer for that. So you know that starting out, but then you have to sort of pull the thread and try to get yourself to the answer. And so it's very fun and very curious, and I love finding new information through that. And people will make great guesses that are totally irrelevant and give you something fun and interesting, little factoids, through their wrong answers. So I just love it as sort of an entertaining way of learning, honestly. Another very silly podcast is Wrong Turns, and this one's a video podcast. So it's hosted by Jamila Jamil, and she has on usually 2 individuals. It just recently started on YouTube, but they are talking through horrible disasters in their life where they've just completely messed up. Really major embarrassments that they've experienced. And so it's about catharsis and being silly, looking back on those things and realizing, hey, we've all really screwed up in our lives. And I just love that level of catharsis is very much needed. And it's definitely a relief in a time of a lot of stress, just societally, to release that. And I would say everybody that I've seen on there has been wildly hilarious. There have been both big and small names, comedians, more serious actors, a real variety. On to a somewhat less silly channel, or sometimes less silly channel, sometimes equally silly channel, Official London Theatre. So over 2020, 2021, during lockdown, obviously theaters were not really running. And so I wound up accidentally following a load of official type of theater performance groups because they were putting out content, entire plays, Zooms of scenes that they were acting through and practice, that sort of thing, on YouTube. So during that time, there was a lot of that going on. Many of those have died away. Official London Theatre, however, has kind of more recently beefed up, actually, what they're putting out. So they're putting out trailers for shows that they're about to put out. They're putting out short musical performances for shows that they're putting out. And so these are well-produced, high-quality. I'm not sure if this is tied to an actual individual theater or if it's a group of London West End theaters, but equivalent to Broadway quality in the US, I would say. So I love that. I'm a person who absolutely loves to go see shows in the theater. I love a musical, so every single thing they post, I pretty much watch. And very often they are posting gluts of short couple-minute videos that are just clips of performance, and I adore it. It really, really sweeps me away. And last in the performance category, I have Denali Fox, who is most well known for RuPaul's Drag Race. So Denali is a drag performer and also an ice dancer. So probably most well known for Drag Race and most recently the All-Stars season 10. But on the channel, Denali has a combination of some hanging out with other drag queens and also these really gorgeous, impeccably choreographed, really well produced ice dances to music. And they wow me every time. I have rewatched some of those videos probably over 100 times. They just bring me so much joy as that person that grew up very near Canada and was really into Canadian ice skating and the Olympics, Winter Olympics, every time. So I definitely have all of that background of 90s ice skating growing up, where this just taps into that love. So I really highly recommend watching some of those ice dancing videos because they are incredible. Onward to news and politics. Stick with me here. They're not the traditional news and politics stuff. So the first two really are Have I Got News for You? And again, this is a British panel show. It also transitioned to the US and is on CNN in the US as well. But it's one of the very, very, very rare cases where it translated and actually worked in the US. And I would say that's primarily to do with the sort of static trio of Roy Wood, Michael Ian Black, and Amber Ruffin, who are always there. Roy is the host, and the other two are sort of on opposing pairs in the show. And the format of both shows is that they're going through kind of the bullet points of what happened in the news for the week, and making quips. They're supposed to actually give factual answers for like what happened during the week when they're being asked these very vague questions. And so you're getting a bit of the news. You're getting the bullet points. You're not getting opinions that you should hold necessarily, but you're getting the news of the week and you're getting funny quips about it. And I appreciate that. That's a good way of intaking the news and not necessarily forming my opinions about that news. But I enjoy the humor. It definitely helps because I have personally taken a big setback from following news this year, certainly, and that has helped me. But I do also still need to somewhat keep up on the big stuff. So I enjoy both versions of the show. Personally, I like the US version more in terms of the people and humor, but I think I like the presentation and broadness of the news that's covered on the UK version. So onward from there, I have a couple of like legal types of news channels. So Legal Eagle is the first one, and I think I've mentioned that channel before. That's also on Nebula. I watch it there, and it's also on YouTube. And Legal Eagle has really ramped up on serious discussion of current news, legal news in the US to do with the political situation in the US. And that really helps for me because they're doing sort of quick fire rundowns of things that are happening with different courts, for instance, like Supreme Court decisions, major legal cases that are going on, laws that are being changed actively, and talking through the legal minutia of that. But they also do silly fun stuff. Like one of the most recent things, it's kind of not silly, it's kind of insidious, but they were talking through like the people who sign on to Love Island and the way they've signed their life away in the contract there. They've done analysis of different courtroom series on TV, like dramas, of legal cases in TV shows like The Good Doctor. And so they do sort of more entertainment style videos as well, but I really appreciate them for the sort of serious legal news they're doing. The other legal channel that I would point you at that I've been watching a lot is Eliza Orland's. And her face is probably going to be very familiar for anyone who watched Survivor, because she was on Survivor a couple of times. And at least the first time she was on, I think she was actually in law school initially. She has since gone on to pass the bar, and go through law school and pass the bar, and has been a Manhattan public defender for many years now. And so she is talking about similar topics, what's going on in the world of law, from that perspective and lens. And I just so appreciate her takes on that and the way it's affecting her clients, really, her clientele, the ways that laws are changing currently. She does do more sort of short style videos, and I do not watch shorts, like the actual formal short labeled videos, but her long form stuff and discussions I really love. I love her insights and what she's bringing from her past experience in law. The next one is actually Nope Brigade. And I think these are TikTok videos mainly that have been ported over to YouTube. So they're kind of, again, in a format that really annoys me, but the content is well worthwhile. So Nope Brigade is a sociologist who is studying specifically US white nationalism right now, and is commenting on current political moves from the perspective of studying that sociological group and the ways that's impacting our politics, and commenting on a lot of really interesting things that are happening and movements in social groups that I would never have even thought of, and things that I'm not observing personally, but are really clear there once highlighted. So I've been enjoying that very, very much. And finally, so the last one is Heather Cox Richardson, who is a historian. And this channel is extremely contentful, I would say. I think if you try to watch everything that Heather Cox Richardson puts out, you'll probably get overwhelmed, because at present, she is putting out a stream basically daily where she sort of talks through the news of the day, and also writing that up, not on her channel, but elsewhere, in a daily blog, because she's somewhat trying to record history as it's happening of the major political moves that are going on right now. And that's on its own fascinating. But she's also got so much else that she's doing as well. So recently there was a whole series of a few minute long videos covering women activists. And it was just her voicing over photos and video clips of these women. Fascinating stuff. There has been a recent performance where she was reading off this really important poem about Lincoln in front of a symphony. So it was actually just a live performance video. She's been doing discussions with major political players, so live discussions with them. She recently had a chat with Gavin Newsom, and some of the questions that she asked him and ways she approached talking about topics that were important to him really made me see him in a new light, honestly. So I love her approach to the information as a historian. So I think those are sort of my news and politics sources that I would go to. And I would say, if you're resistant to news and politics, for me, actually, I think Hannah from Hannah's Books said this on a discussion she was having with Steve Donahue here on BookTube. Something about reading about history and politics, giving you a sense of feeling more control, seeing how things in the past have actually been lived through, how we've made positive change from really dire situations, can give you a sense of control. And that, for me, is what these are doing to some degree, where they're making me feel more hopeful a bit, even though they're covering really, really difficult topics, because they can help me understand where we're at. I would say one thing that I would point out about all of these, as you will notice, other than that first, the Have I Got News For You, which is just pretty pure comedy, all of these are sources that are experts in a field. And that's really something I turn to when I'm looking for this kind of information, is someone who is actually an expert versus just a person having an opinion on the internet. That's not something I need more of. I pretty much do away with any of that, except for people I know and care about their opinions, really. So I think those are the things that I've been watching that have really been bringing me joy, bringing me solace in a lot of chaotic times, definitely. So hopefully you have discovered somebody that you might want to watch. But if not, tell me someone that I should have had on this list but didn't, that I'm not watching, or I just didn't mention, because I am discovering and looking for more to check out and to follow my whims. So please let me know what channels I need to check out in these areas down below, because I welcome your input for sure. So that is it for me for this slightly unusual video today, and thank you so very much for watching.